We're going to get into. Um, this is on the second part of political parties, part two, and this is getting into chapter 9 of your workbook, textbook. And we already did the first video, which was dealing with how do you pick a candidate, and we kind of outlined that. And we went into the money side of that, which was dealing with the beginning of where does the money come from when a candidate does get picked to run. Where do they get all this money that they're going to use to be able to spend for a campaign? Well, we talked about the chart there, and we went through all the different parts of that. Now we're going to break it down even further. Now, first off, in 1972, kind of give you a background of history here a little bit. In 1972, previous to that, there really wasn't much at all of any type of restrictions going on as far as how candidates were getting money to be able to spend for their elections. There were some attempts being made at trying to stop this and restrict this with the Hatch Act and with some other attempts to try to limit it and to put some restrictions upon it, but there really wasn't anything in place. Well, then in 1972, we had Watergate, which was the break-in of the Democratic National Headquarters by the Republican Party under the Nixon administration for the purpose of sabotaging the Republicans and the election of 1972. Now, the reason why that relates back here to campaign spending is because of the fact that the Nixon administration had all this cash, which they were just flooded in, that they were given to them by these big campaign donors, and they were using this cash illegally to deal with the election, sabotaging the Democrats, and many other things. So after Watergate and after the big blowup of it, the Federal Election Commission was created as part of a whole series of congressional actions to try to limit the amount of money that was being put into campaigns and how they were being spent. Some of the big parts to this 1972 restriction was these three laws here that were implemented, which was that individual candidates, that the most that you could give an individual candidate for a campaign was $1,000 per election. So I could give a candidate $1,000 in the primary, and then if they won that and went into the general election, I could give them another $1,000. But that was the maximum that I could give. I was also limited if I was a PAC, which is a political action committee, which is, again, an organization made up of a group of people who support similar ideas and wanting to get certain things done within either a organization, a business, or just a group of people who believed in an idea or concept or ideology that they were all supporting and all giving money to. They were limited to $5,000. Finally, because of all that cash that was flooding in during the Watergate scandal, they limited the amount of cash that could be given to a candidate to just $100. So of that 1,000, then it has to be a check or something that would be transferable in terms of a paper trail that could be discovered as to who was giving the money, where the money was coming from, all of that then. Well, this went on for a very short period of time, and then, of course, the political bigwigs, the super groups out there and individuals, the wealthy contributors, and all of the different business corporations didn't like this. So they took it to court. And the very first court case to go against this whole issue of campaign spending was called Buckley versus Vallejo, in which the Supreme Court took the case and they ruled that money was free speech. And under that, there are three major rulings that they created. One is that you cannot limit the spending by a candidate themselves. So if a candidate wants to, spend as much money as they want to, that's fine. And there were attempts under the Federal Election Campaign Commission to limit the amount of spending that candidates could do per election. So, for example, a Senate race could only spend maybe a maximum of $1 million for their campaign. So they put these ceilings on how much a candidate could spend. Well, that got thrown out. Two, you can't limit the candidate's own money being spent. So if I'm running for an office, then I could spend whatever amount of money I want to. So in the 2016 race here, we had Donald Trump, who was running for the Republican nomination. He was spending mostly, probably 90% of the money that was being spent on his campaign was coming out of his own contribution, his own money that was being spent. And he can spend whatever amount he wants to then under the Buckley versus Vallejo ruling. Number 3, you cannot limit money being spent on behalf. Now here's where it's going to get very tricky. On behalf of a candidate. So now if I want to support a candidate, those 3 rules that I have at the top there, the Supreme Court upheld all 3 of those. So I can still only give a candidate $1,000 under the Supreme Court ruling, Buckley versus Vallejo. I can only give a PAC, or a PAC can only give a candidate $5,000. But I'm unlimited in how much money I want to spend on behalf of my candidate. So if I want to go buy airtime on news organizations and radio and put up billboards on behalf of my candidate, but I'm not giving the money to my candidate, I'm doing it for them. The Supreme Court said that's free speech. That's perfectly fine for me to do. If I want to spend my money against a candidate that I don't like, I'm perfectly free to do that as long as I'm not giving the money to the candidate. So, what loopholes were created out of the Buckley versus Vallejo court case? Well, first, soft money. There was nothing issued as far as how state and local party organizations could spend money or could receive money in contributions. So if I wanted to give a political party thousands of dollars, no problem. Millions of dollars, no problem. So basically, this is what soft money is. It's money that the political parties can take in, then they can give the money to the candidates or spend the money for the candidates, and I as a contributor can give whatever I want to. That was untouched. So in 2000, there was over $500 million being given to the campaigns of each political party. And again, you have these huge, immensely wealthy people who just have gods and subs of money that they can just give out to these candidates. And it's really a farce on our political system that we have this, and it really is a detrimental effect on our whole political spectrum that we can have politicians bought off like this. But the Supreme Court said it's okay. Number 2, independent campaign spending. A person unrelated and unconnected to the candidate can spend as much as they wanted. Okay, we already covered that. Number 3, issue ads. I could take a stand on a certain issue if I am supporting global warming, or if I support the idea of a fair tax system, or support the idea of going to war in Syria or Iraq, or whatever the issue may be. Whatever I want to take that stand on, and I support or I go against a certain candidate who goes against or believes in what I believe in, then I can take out all kinds of ads either supporting or attacking a candidate, and that's perfectly fine to do. Also, the other 2 things that got created out of this was what's called 527s and 501Cs. Now, where these come from is from the IRS tax code. That's where these 2 numbers come from. And basically what these numbers were is, again, if I want to give huge sums of money out to candidates, okay, and I want to write that off on my taxes, it's perfectly legal to do. But under the difference is under a 527 now, I can endorse a candidate. However, I cannot give that money again directly to the candidate then. I can do it for voter registration, I could do it for issue ads, I could do it for energizing supporters, but I can't do it directly under the law of 527 to a candidate, okay? Also, I must disclose all donors that are giving money to my 527. So whatever organization I create under this 527 that is taking in all this money, such as Americans for Prosperity or all these other different organizations, how much money I collect under this that I then go spend on behalf of the candidate or on an issue or whatever, I have to say who's giving me this money. 501Cs, though, are unlimited. Non-disclosed, non-specific, no direct connection, but they do not have to list all their donors. That's a huge difference with those 501Cs. So we don't know who's giving the money out under a 501C. It could be another country. It could be a terrorist organization that's giving money to support a certain candidate. None of that is known under these rules and under these loopholes then. So again, the federal government in 2000, going into 2002, 2005, tries to pass a series of laws to limit and to try to put restrictions on this huge, massive campaign spending. First, they banned soft money in 2002. Then, under the McCain-Feingold Act, they basically limited how much corporations, unions, and other associations can use of their money to deal with what's called electioneering communications. Those issue ads we talked about, those basically giving out money for media support and for all of those kinds of things. All of that the McCain-Feingold law tried to limit. Then it raised the limit on how much an individual contributor could give to a candidate from 1,000 to 2,000, and it put in there that that amount, that 2,000, would go up according to the adjustments of inflation. Today, it's around $2,600 that I, as an individual, could give a candidate for office per election. So that has gone up quite a bit. The idea there was to let the American people, if all the American people would give $2,600, the maximum amount, that could fund a candidate's election office. And it would be free speech. It would be great for our system to do that. But instead, what happened is in 2008, we had another Supreme Court case. Citizens United versus FEC. Now, you're going to be watching a video on this and answering some questions over it that's really going to give you a lot more detail about what exactly happened with this court case. But it was immensely important because this court case opened the floodgates now to what we have today, with there is just a massive amount of spending being done by these huge mega wealthy corporations and individuals who are buying candidates. They basically are taking a candidate they want and they're giving them millions of dollars to run on these campaigns. And so as a candidate, I don't have to go out and fundraise anymore with individual donors. All I need is daddy Warbucks behind me, supporting me, and I got a shot to win. And we've seen that in 2016 race on both the Republican and Democrat sides. Basically what happened in 2008, the election, was there was a group that tried to create a film very critical of Hillary. They got all this money for this film to make it. Basically, then it went to court saying that they had to list out their donors. That was under that 527 thing. They went in and said no, they didn't, because it would be limiting their free speech to be able to have to list those donors then. So that's what they were fighting over, is saying that these corporations did not want to give out their names as to who was giving money for this film to go against Hillary back in the election of 2008 to try to distort her campaign and to distort her as a person. The Supreme Court came back and said, oh, yep, corporations are not only free speech, but they are considered to be legal people in politics, so therefore you cannot limit corporations and their free speech. It was a 5-4 decision. The critics argue that it allows for special interests to control overwhelmingly the power and control of our election system. And again, there's two videos. One is dealing with the Citizens United specifically. The other is going to deal with the whole election system under what's known as Citizen Coke. And you'll have both those videos to watch and answer questions over. So I'm not going to get into a great deal of detail here, but basically you can finish up with the notes there and see what exactly went on with Citizens United. And then go into the two websites, watch the videos over Citizens United, and you will really learn about what is going on here with our corporate system and how corrupt it is and how horrible it is. I'm not sure if I can get the other video, the Citizen Coke one. I'm going to try to see if I can get that downloaded too. But if not, you definitely have the one on the website there that you can watch and get the notes from and answer the questions over then. So with that, we're going to finish this video here, and then we will move on to the next one.